It is Tuesday, June 30th. I'm Sam Cedar.
And I'm Lucy Steiner. Which one of these stories will you be talking about today?
The Russian government allegedly placed bounties on American troops in Afghanistan, hoping to provoke the Taliban and other extremist fighters to further inflame the endless conflict there. New reports show that Trump was briefed months ago about this and did, well, nothing. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court struck down a Louisiana law that could have decimated the state's remaining abortion clinics. And lastly, the Kentucky Senate primary between progressive Charlie Booker and establishment darling Amy McGrath in Kentucky is still too close to call.
You're listening to Majority.fm's AM Quickie, and these are the stories you need to know.
A new story involving Russians and America's never-ending war in Afghanistan is sweeping through the media. Here are the broad strokes. Multiple outlets have now reported that starting as early as 2019, the Russian military was offering bounties to the Taliban and other extremist groups in Afghanistan for successfully killing U.S. troops. The U.S., of course, has been half-heartedly trying to negotiate and uphold a peace deal with the Taliban, but it makes sense that Russia would want to throw a wrench into that process by any means necessary. But the scandal has now become when exactly the Trump administration was aware of the fact that a foreign power was putting out hits on its own troops. Trump administration is stressed that the president wasn't briefed on the issue, but several reports say that's BS. The Associated Press reports that, quote, top officials in the White House were aware of the intelligence report way back in 2019. The New York Times, meanwhile, reports that our spies gave Trump himself a written briefing on the matter in February. Russia, of course, denies putting out the bounties. Of course. If Trump knew about it a month or even a year ago, many Republicans and Democrats in Congress are understandably pissed off that he didn't do anything or respond in any way. The problem is there's no real winner here. If Trump knew about it and did nothing, that sucks. But at the same time, Trump's response to Russia's action could have been disastrous. This is not someone we can count on to put out a logical, measured response, let alone a decent one, like, say, just getting all of our troops out of Afghanistan in the first place. War hawks will want to weaponize this story to goad the U.S. to further conflict with Russia or Afghanistan or whoever else gets in the way, which we should have learned by now is a bad idea. Whichever way you look at it, it's a mess, but it's almost certainly going to dominate the headlines for the next few days, so keep an eye out for updates. The Supreme Court delivered its second shock ruling in as many weeks on Monday, as Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the court's 4 liberal justices to strike down an abortion law in Louisiana. If upheld, the law would have reduced the state to a single solitary abortion clinic, a massive barrier to women's right to choose in the state. Roberts' decision to side with the liberals enraged conservatives. Ted Cruz, for instance, ranted about Roberts', quote, political gamesmanship, end quote. But before we get too hopeful, it's useful to look at why Roberts made the decision he did. Sure, he sided with the liberals on this case, but not really for altruistic reasons. The law in question was almost identical to a Texas law the Supreme Court rejected in 2016. Roberts only voted against the Louisiana law because of stare decisis, theory that courts should be bound by their past decisions, particularly ones that were made just 4 years ago. But what he also did was point the way that conservatives could write a more legally sound law that would get through the court and crush abortion rights that way. This is similar to Roberts' ruling on the DACA program, which he upheld last week. He sided with the liberals, but only because the conservative case was so legally sloppy, he didn't want to rubber stamp it. In other words, Roberts is just telling the conservatives who want to do more fascism toward immigrants and women that they need to do their homework and get back to him. For now, abortion clinics in Louisiana are safe, relatively speaking, but if the courts stay in Roberts' hands, it's only a matter of time before the conservatives come for them again across the country.
Majority.fm's AM Quickie is fueled by JustCoffee.coop. Just Coffee is a worker-owned coffee roaster based in Madison, Wisconsin that has sponsored the Majority Report for nearly a decade. Check out their collection of fair trade roasts, including our own Majority Report blend. And regardless of what you order, receive 10% off your order when you use the code MAJORITY at checkout. And all shipping is free. That's coupon code MAJORITY at JustCoffee.coop.
Elections aren't one-night affairs anymore, folks, and Kentucky's Democratic Senate primary has lasted a whole week. The race between progressive Charles Booker and the former fighter pilot, Democratic establishment darling Amy McGrath, is way, way closer than anyone thought it would be. A few months ago, it looked like McGrath had the whole thing locked up with a massive campaign, war chest, and the endorsement of pretty much everyone who's anyone in the Democratic old guard. But with just weeks to go before the election, Booker started surging as people realized there wasn't much to Amy besides a fat wallet of DNC cash. Booker, meanwhile, stepped up during the nationwide protest against police brutality and continued to push his progressive Medicare for All and universal basic income platform. Now the two are neck and neck. As of early Tuesday morning, McGrath is up by under 3,000 votes. There's still a ton of absentee ballots to count. Booker has been crushing it in in-person voting, but the worry is that some of the mail-in ballots were cast before he got his big surge in momentum. Most of the absentees that are out are from Fayette and Jefferson counties, the state's most populous areas. The county election boards are expected to convene early Tuesday morning to tally up the final results, which should be announced sometime late in the morning today, but could very well get pushed to the afternoon. You know how these things go. I'm sure we'll be discussing it on the full show this afternoon, so check it out. And also, you can search for our interview that we did with Charles Booker months ago. Very impressive candidate.
And now for some quicker quickies.
Quicker Quickie.
In New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio and the city council appear to have agreed on a budget that sort of, not really, cuts $1 billion from the NYPD's budget. Activists warn, though, that the bill is mostly a load of hot air aimed at shuffling money around, not actually defunding the department. Elsewhere, in out-of-control police, Aurora, Colorado's local CBS outlet reports that at least 3 Aurora police officers are under investigation for taking inappropriate, disrespectful photos after violently breaking up a peaceful vigil for Elijah McClain, a young man who was killed by the same department last year. Officers reportedly reenacted the chokehold that killed him. China passed a sweeping, controversial new law that gave mainland government a massive amount of power to crack down on dissent in Hong Kong, a move which is almost certainly to inflame the massive protest movement there. This would be a huge change for Hong Kong, which until now has largely existed with civil liberties the heavily repressive Chinese government denies the rest of its people. And lastly, Big Pharma continues to take lives for money as Gilead Sciences announced an absurd price of around $520 per dose of a new coronavirus treatment drug. Not only did the federal government fund the research into this drug, advocates claim the drug could be produced for as little as $1 a dose, but you can't tell that to the capitalists in charge of the healthcare in this country.
Quicker Quickie.
That's all for today's AM Quickie. Join us live today at noon on The Majority Report or later as a podcast.